absolutely take my money. By lunchtime, I would be sitting in my car crying. Some kids kicking a ball at my face. First tip, don't take social anxiety advice from me. I'm barely making it through life myself. Anyway, I am currently in Littlehampton, come out on a little solo trip by myself. But if you want to see more of that, then check out the previous vlogs. I asked you guys on Instagram if you had any questions to do with absolutely anything. Now we're going to answer those questions to the best of our abilities. I got a couple of how are you doing and how are you doing after your dip in your mental health. I don't feel like I'm out the other side of it yet. I was kind of hoping that this solo trip would be a little bit of a boost, and I was kind of hoping that it would reignite self-love. Like I would find a way to love myself again, but I actually realised this morning that that's quite ambitious to go from absolutely hating yourself to being like, okay, I'm going to go on a solo trip and try and love myself again. That kind of thing doesn't happen in a day or in a couple of days. This trip, when I booked it, given me something to look forward to, and I think that's like really important when your mental health's down the shitter. It's what my mum says every time you come back from a holiday and you get the holiday blues. She was always like, book something else in, you know, even just like put it in the diary or look into something because it gives you something to look forward to. And I think that's actually pretty solid advice, and I think that's exactly what's happened with this trip. In terms of mental health, like this year's been probably the worst year. I fell into a really deep hatred of myself and like depression from about February to at least June, and I think since booking this trip it's kind of has picked up a little bit for me. But I know not everyone has the money to just like book a trip and go, or maybe not old enough to do that, or you don't feel comfortable doing that on your own. But that is one thing that's like really helped me this time around. At what age did you realise you were struggling with your mental health, and what were the symptoms? Look, I didn't know that I was struggling for years because I was one of those people who just like really pushed things down and like never showed my emotion, never talked about my emotions. I would literally lock it away. I think I was 21 when I first went to therapy, and I was just so sick of everything. Like I was literally a closed book. You wouldn't be able to get anything out of me. I don't really know what the symptoms were because I never was aware of mental health or like my mental health symptoms. But I do know that I went to therapy when I was 21 because I just wanted something to change. But I recognise that I've been struggling with my mental health way before 21. Like a really big standout moment was when I was 13 and I found out the average life expectancy of someone with cystic fibrosis. And if you don't know, that is a condition that I have. It's a condition that primarily affects the lungs and the digestive system. Basically found out the life expectancy at that point was 31. And when you see that when you're 13, like my world just shrank. I felt like a tiny little dot, insignificant, and it really fucked with my mental health because going through teenage years with all your school friends around you and all your peers and all your classmates, I'd look around and think, these guys don't have to worry about that. Like these guys, they can like grow old. I'm not gonna be here. Like my time is ticking down, like a little like sand timer kind of thing. But I was not aware of any of this because I kept everything locked down so tightly. So it wasn't really anything that I ever dealt with properly. Hence why I ended up going to therapy, because years of pushing that kind of thing down does come back to bite you in the ass. After your first solo trip, do you think you'll do it again? Yeah, I do. I think the thought of it, especially for someone like me who struggles to get out of the house by myself, it was like really intimidating, really daunting. But like I said in the other video, sometimes for me, I just need to like jump in the deep end with this kind of thing. I've done these solo trips before, so I know that I can do it. But I think this is just like another piece of evidence in the evidence bag to say evidently I can. And if you know, you know. And that's a big reason as to why I started up my Etsy shop called Evidently I Can, because I wanted that phrase to mean something to people. I wanted that phrase to empower people to be like, okay, I've done this big thing. Evidently I can do it again. So I'm definitely going to take that phrase and let it empower me into more solo trips on my own. Why should we wait for someone else's schedule, basically, to be free when you can just go now? Especially for someone like me who doesn't have many friends. I mean, that's great if you can do that. I've never had that luxury of having loads of friends to do that with. But actually, in times like now, where I can just like pack up the car and go by myself whenever I want. I can stay whenever I want. You know, I can do whatever I want on the trip. There's no confines as to, oh my god, I gotta be ready at this time because this person wants to go here and we need to go here because we booked this whole thing. Like, I'm such a chilled person when it comes to holidays, and I think it's kind of really boosted up my confidence, especially with driving. Like, yeah, no, I can drive actually. I can even get the train. One thing I can't do though is pack efficiently. I'm a panic packer. I think that was a really long-winded way of saying yes, I probably will go on a solo trip again. It puts me in a different environment, and I think that's really important when you are depressed and when you are stuck in the same room, in the same house, day in, day out. That's all your life is. And you feel like you're just surviving, you're not living, you're not thriving, you're simply just breathing in a room that you're stuck in. I really feel that, and I really get that, and that was me for the last 4 or 5 months. And I think like a solo trip like this, even if it's just for like a couple of nights or one night, getting you out of that house, getting you out of that environment, a change of environment is just like so imperative for me anyway. What is your favourite TV show? Up there is The Mentalist. Highly recommend watching The Mentalist if you have not. It's all on Prime if you have Prime. Mentalist and Altered Carbon. Okay, look, if you like your film noir, being a bit of a film geek here, everything about Altered Carbon is just like, yes. The cinematography, the storyline, I just freaking love that show. It's on Netflix. Second season, it's alright. It's not as good as the first though. Whoa. Okay, cool. Can you like play over there a little bit? Ooh. He does not give a fuck. Like, genuinely does not give a fuck. I'm over here being like, don't you hit me? When you say dissociating, what exactly do you mean? Like daydreaming or zoning out? Curious. Dissociation is like a really difficult thing to explain if you've not ever experienced it. In basic terms, it's like, I know that I'm here. I'm sitting on this picnic blanket. I'm in a field somewhere. Some kid's kicking a ball at my face. I know that I'm here, but mentally I don't feel here. Like, I'm numb to it. Someone explained this to me a while ago, but it's like putting on a VR headset and like you're playing a game, but you're not actually here. You're not actually in the game. You're just playing the game. That's how it kind of feels. My therapist says that it's a coping mechanism because my brain is so overwhelmed by my surroundings and by whatever I'm doing that I just have to disconnect. Otherwise I'll go into like an overwhelm state. It's really annoying, especially when you are looking forward to doing something. Or like a couple of years ago I went to see one of my favourite bands live for the first time ever, and the entire time I just completely dissociated. Like, I knew I was there, I knew they were there, I knew they were playing all of these songs and instruments, and I knew that I was in a crowd of people, but mentally I did not feel there. And it's really kind of disheartening to not get to like experience that, even though you want to. How are you getting on with the creon crisis? I'm struggling massively. Okay, again, people who don't know, I have cystic fibrosis, which basically means that like anything that I eat and drink with fat in it, I have to take tablets. I have to take pancreatic enzyme, and at the moment there is a shortage of these pancreatic enzymes, so the creon crisis is bad. Not gonna lie, it's not great, is it? One perk of having a CF boyfriend though is like sometimes he's able to get some, and so he gives me a pot, and I'm like, okay, cool, fine. For a while there I was rationing my creons or just trying to eat less fatty things. The consequences of that is that you end up on the toilet for most of the day. It's not good. It's not good, bro. Here's to hoping that creons come back in stock so we can all live life again. But I think I'm lucky with creons because I don't take as much as a lot of people. Like James, he has, I don't know, like 20 tablets for one bite of a sandwich. He has 20 creons for, whereas me, I'm like, take 1 or 2 for a sandwich. So I think I'm quite lucky in the sense that I don't need to take much, but I definitely do feel the consequences if I don't. How was it when you worked in a store/jobs with your anxiety? Because I cried at my first shift while working. Well, let me tell you something right now. I can tell you categorically right now that you are not alone in that situation, because every single job that I had, like an office job, by lunchtime I would be sitting in my car crying every single time because I hated it so much, because I felt like I was a square peg in a round hole. Like, it just didn't suit me at all, and I was trying to force myself into being a square when actually I'm a circle, and it just never fit. Every single office job that I have had, I quit without a doubt by the 4th day. By the 4th day I couldn't hack it, and I just left.
I've just resigned.
And that wasn't like an intentional thing each time, but it just got to the 4th day and I was like, I can't do this anymore, I'm quitting. And I made a whole video about quitting my 9-to-5 job. Leave a link up here if you're interested, or down below. But yeah, honestly, my anxiety was so bad that it made me quit by the 4th day. That's why I knew that like being self-employed was the only way for me to be able to work. Would never be able to do a job. The only times when it wasn't so bad was when my first job working at M&S in like a big store, because it was also like a new store. So there was a group of us starting brand new at the same time. We all just kind of became like a little family. Whereas like with other jobs, you feel like you're just jumping in to someone else's territory and you're just like the odd one out, like the one on the outside. And that's another thing, like with these jobs, like so many people said to me, oh, just give it time, just give it a couple of weeks, just stick with it for like a month. And I'm like, a month? I'm not gonna make it past day 3. I've never regretted quitting a job because I just knew it wasn't right for me. If you know in your heart of heart that this job is not for you, I just quit. Like, I wouldn't bother with the whole stick at it for 5 months or whatever. That's never worked for me. It might work for you, but never for me. I think all of that talk of jobs has kind of put me on nicely to, have you had an ADHD assessment yet? I didn't realise that this was an ADHD thing. Quitting jobs and moving on to the next thing. Have I had an ADHD assessment yet? No, because I think I have potentially ADHD. So you might be saying, well, Kate, why don't you go and get an assessment then? Why don't you go to your GP? And I'm like, well, because that task is too overwhelming for my little brain. And any like big tasks that require a lot of mental energy, I avoid doing. I put it off, so much so that I have put off booking an ADHD assessment for 2 years. Like, my therapist first brought this up with me 2 years ago now, and I have just put it off because I know that it requires a lot of mental energy. From what people have said to me, it's like pages and pages, questionnaires and assessment forms to fill in and stuff. And then I realised that that's an ADHD thing, putting things off that require a lot of mental energy. And I'm like, this whole ADHD thing is not very ADHD friendly. Let me tell you that for nothing. So basically, long story short, no, I haven't yet. How did you manage your anxiety when you were employed? I didn't. I absolutely have never been able to manage my anxiety when I was employed, so I cannot give you any advice with that area other than to quit. So probably don't listen to me. Thoughts on medication for anxiety. I actually went to my GP, maybe when I first started seeing my therapist actually, and we did a general anxiety disorder test thing where she asked me a bunch of questions and I scored really high. Surprise, surprise. I scored really high on that test. And she was like, okay, if you want to, you can go to your GP and you can tell them how you're feeling and say that you've done a GAD-7. GAD meaning general anxiety disorder. 7, I guess that's the name of the test or something, I don't know. So I mustered up the courage and I went to my GP and I sat down and was like, look, I'm feeling really anxious all the time. I get heart palpitations every now and again, which is a symptom of anxiety, and I have done a GAD-7 with my therapist. And she was like, what's a GAD-7? I was like, well, I don't know, I thought you were meant to know that. She didn't know what that was. Because I had mentioned heart palpitations, she then told me that I needed to cut down on the caffeine intake I was taking. At the time, I had maybe 2 teas a day and 1 coffee. That's it. That was it for my caffeine intake. And she was like, you need to cut down on this coffee. We need to order you an ECG and a blood test. And I genuinely walked out of that appointment feeling so let down and so disappointed. Because at that point in my life, like, I was still quite young. I was still quite new to opening up about things. And I was quite disappointed that she'd completely disregarded everything that I said, that I had opened up to her. And she had just been like, yeah, no, it's not anxiety. Not anxiety, you're just taking too much caffeine. I just felt very let down by my GP, so I've kind of have this like really, is it called medical gaslighting, I think? And I have not seeked out anxiety medication since. Some people anxiety meds really work for, some people it doesn't, and I guess you will never know until you try it. Hey, I do know some people who have gone on anxiety medication and they are doing so amazing on it, they feel great on it, and they recommend it to anyone who feels anxious. So I can't speak from experience, but from secondary experience, a lot of people said that it's really good. This one's really interesting. What would your dream life look like? Want to be doing something creative? Genuinely, I have always loved YouTube, and I've always dreamt of YouTube being my job. Even though we're on, like, I don't know what we're on, like the 8th year of trying this now. The reason for that is consistency, and this is another problem. If I do indeed have ADHD, how on earth do you be consistent with ADHD unless you're on medication? Like, how do you do it? I don't know. But people do it. People are just like whipping out content every single day and they have ADHD, and I'm looking at them like, how do you do that? Because I struggle with consistency big time and motivation big time. But anyway, back to the question. Sorry, I got sidetracked there. there tell me you have ADHD without telling me you have ADHD. Anyway, I always dreamed of YouTube being my main job. And I think it's the thing, like, where I'm at the moment. I have my... What's the phrase? You have your hands in many pots? Any pies or something? I think I'm doing too much. I think I've got about 4 businesses. I keep dipping in and out of them, and in order to be consistent, and if I am actually to do YouTube full time, then I need to put all of my fingers in this pie and just have like the friends to do stuff with. I feel like that would be my dream, just to like be free and do what I love for a job. So, you know, if you're not already subscribed, then maybe consider subscribing. Do you have sometimes suicidal thoughts? Because I have a lot, because of my social anxiety and depression. One, I'm really sorry to hear that. I know what that's like to feel that way because of social anxiety and depression. Is literally where I've been this year. I know you haven't actually specifically asked for any tips or anything, but please do speak to someone. Friend, family, online therapist. You know, there's companies out there like BetterHelp who do online therapy, not sponsored by them at all. But yeah, I do understand what that's like. You're not alone with that. Please stay with us. You really do matter, even though you feel like you don't. Your presence is needed. I really hope you feel less suicidal soon. How to allow myself to be seen when I've spent my whole life hiding. Oh, I don't have anything for this. If anyone has any tips for this question, please drop it in the comments below. Like I said before, like, I really hid who I was for such a long time, and trying to allow yourself to be seen is like a really vulnerable and intimidating thing to do. It really starts with believing in yourself and loving who you are fully and seeing yourself fully before you can allow other people to see yourself fully. I don't know, that's probably really bad advice, but I really struggle with that. I don't want people to see me. Oh, why do you have a YouTube channel then, gay? Fair enough. I think it really does come down to just really loving yourself first and really working on your self-love and doing a lot of shadow work and understanding why you feel the way you do. That's where I would start with that. But honestly, if anyone has any other tips, then please drop it in the comments. I'm not a licensed therapist. I am barely making it through life myself, so probably don't take it from me, do you know what I mean? Do you find living with CF exhausting both physically and mentally? Up until about 2020, I would have said absolutely yes to both of those things, but since this new modulator drug has come out, a modulator drug just means that it's treating the underlying cause of CF and not just the symptoms. So it's kind of like really the first of its kind to make a really big difference. For me personally, it doesn't work for everyone. Since then, a lot of my CF symptoms have gone. Like, I genuinely don't feel like I have CF, except of course when we're in a creon crisis. If you know, you know. For example, I used to cough every single day of my life. Hundreds of times a day I would be coughing because it affects the lungs, right? But since this modulator drug, I rarely cough unless I've got a cold or something, or I do have like a chest infection crop up every now and again. But before this modulator drug, I was exhausted. I didn't realise how little energy I had until afterwards, if that makes sense. Because before that, you just live with it and you're like, okay, this is just life, this is just how I live. But after having a drug like Kaftrio and Kalydeco, you kind of start to realise that, oh, I had more energy come back, and I was like, oh my god, I can do things. Like, I don't get exhausted like I once did. I would definitely say, like, physically things are like so much better now than they have ever been in my life. Like, my lung function is the highest it's ever been. Mentally, I actually think like most of my mental health problems now are not CF related, which is like, what? It probably all does kind of like stem from CF stuff, like back in my, you know, from my past, kind of comes through, like with anxiety and like social anxiety and feeling like the odd one out and feeling left out. And so it probably kind of does all kind of like intertwine at some point, but obviously mentally I am still not great. Sun's gone in, it's suddenly bloody cold. Advice on how to meet someone when you have extreme social anxiety. Never had a boy/dated. I'm actually just gonna have to sit up because I think I'm doing my back in. Exposure therapy is like really helpful for this, and there's no way to do it but just do it. What do I mean by that? I actually don't know. People are looking at me now because I'm sat up and I'm just talking to myself. Wait for the people to pass. Just giving social anxiety advice, and there's like people. First tip, don't take social anxiety advice from me. Glad we got that straight. You have to practice it to get good at it. So if, say, for example, you go to the shops and maybe instead of going to the self-checkout counter, you go to someone who has a till open and you make an effort to say, hi, how's your day going? Busy day? You doing just like really basic small talk stuff, which I know for someone with social anxiety is really, really difficult. Like doing like small stuff like that and like building it up. Maybe you then go to a coffee shop and ask the barista how they're doing. And I know it's going to seem like really basic for most people. If you do have like extreme anxiety, you do have to start small, and exposure therapy, that shit, and like build it up to the point where you just feel like so confident in doing that. But then also like you have to have a certain level of acceptance and self-acceptance. I think that's what social anxiety kind of does come down to, is like accepting you for who you are, even if that means that you're a quiet, introverted, social anxiety person. You just got to have that level of acceptance. And I say that as easy, but I generally am struggling with self-acceptance at the moment, so I know it's not easy. And I wish I could give some better advice. That's all I have at the moment. How are you at night when you're alone? This is the main thing that puts me off. I'm guessing they mean with solo traveling here. Girl, I am the same. Like, I'm coming up close to this one. At night time, I really, really struggle being on my own. Some of the things that I have done here at night, I turn on all of the lights in all of the rooms. I don't know why, but it just helps me with that. I make sure that I have triply checked the doors are locked, everything is locked, like no one can get in or out. I've checked the whole entire space, and I also make sure that people have my location. My boyfriend has my location and my parents have my location. Also, this is going to actually sound mad to some people out there, but I put stuff in front of the bedroom door. So if someone does try to come in, I will at least have a couple of seconds notice to like grab my phone. And you can do the thing where you like, at least on the iPhone, where you can like tap the side button like 5 times quickly in a row and it calls the police. So I have like little mechanisms like that already set up. But I think one of like the really key things for me at night especially, this has actually really helped. I didn't think it would, but literally placing my hand on my heart and saying out loud to myself, I'm safe. I'm safe, and I got you, and I got you. And that is something that has actually really helped. I didn't think it would, because it sounds like so trivial and like so like really kind of thing. But honestly, just telling yourself over and over again that I'm safe, I'm safe, I'm safe. And sometimes I even say it to like my, younger self almost, who does not feel safe. Like I imagine saying to her, like she's next to me, but like, I got you, it's going to be okay, I've got you. Safe, I'm okay. I'm safe, because my mind is so good at like imagining things and believing that they're true. So I could literally imagine there would be a man standing in the room with me when I'm asleep. I could like literally see that, and I can very easily let my mind run away with me and get the better of me. But I really have to like shut that down as soon as those thoughts come into my mind. Otherwise I will run with it and I will take it too far and I will start panicking. But I think really the key thing is to not let those thoughts, those emotions like get up to 100 and let yourself start believing in it. So easy to let anxiety run away with you, but I do know that feeling very, very well, and you're definitely not alone with that. Actually, I think this leads me on to someone else asked a question. Tips for feeling safe on solo trips. I feel like this kind of goes nicely into that. So first and foremost, like I said, my boyfriend, James, and my parents all have my location. Also, I have downloaded this app called Hollyguard. If you ever feel unsafe, then your emergency contacts, you can put whoever in, you can press a button or you can shake your phone and it will send that person your location, the coordinates. It will start taking evidence in the voice of like video, I think, which I think is really helpful. I also saw this other app called ePower, which I was really excited to try, and I follow them on Instagram and stuff. I was like, oh my god, this is amazing. I really want this app for when I go out by myself. The only thing I found with that is that the people who you want to be like an emergency contact or like share your location with, they have to sign up to the app as well. Whereas with Hollyguard, you don't have to do that. So yeah, if they can make that a thing where you don't have to sign up to it, that would be great. Anyway, also, I have this alarm on my bag. You might have seen it in different videos. Basically, that is a high-pitched alarm. I just got it on Amazon, and you basically pull out, I'm not going to do it here, I will not do it, but you basically pull this bit out, and the alarm is deafening. It has a little light that flashes up as well. So that is another little tip that I use whenever I'm going out by myself. I always have that, because it's unfortunate. You can never say that it's not going to happen and it's a load of bullshit, because it does happen to women and we do have to be careful out there. So there's just like several different tips of like how I manage that at the moment. What are your fave apps on your phone? Productivity, games, etc. Headspace. I've been using Headspace for years. I wish they would sponsor this channel because I talk about them so much, but don't worry, we will get there. They will come to me me eventually. But Headspace is definitely an app. It's like a meditation app. I use daily, I'm not gonna lie, but it's like not even for the meditations anymore, because I've like really fallen off my meditation game since my mental health has gone downhill. Maybe that's why my mental health's gone downhill. No meditating. I do use it daily in terms of like the sleeping sounds and the sleep casts. I can't sleep without a sleep cast on or any of their sleep sounds. I've always find there's like a meditation specifically for when you have a racing mind and you can't sleep. I use that so often because often my mind is racing at night and I cannot sleep, and Headspace is like my go-to app. Probably one of the best apps I have ever downloaded is called Opal. I downloaded Opal back in October, November last year, and it's basically an app that blocks certain apps at certain times of the day. Okay, so I looked at so many different of these apps that block things like TikTok and Instagram because I am such a scroller. I could just do that for hours and hours and hours. So I was like, I really need an app that blocks me from that. And I found a few, but because I do a lot of stuff on social media, I sometimes actually do need to go on Instagram and I do need to go on TikTok. And so I can't just have those apps blocked all the time. So I was like, I really need an app that will block it for like certain sessions of the day. And this app does that. Let me tell you, this app does quite a lot, but that's like the main thing that I use it for. Say in the morning, like I know that between like 9 and 12, I'm going to be doing my work and I'm not going to need to go on TikTok or Instagram. Then I can block it out from 9 till 12. I have like a 2-hour break. And then from like 2:15 onwards till about, I don't know, 3:30, it's blocked again. So like I get like these little snippets, so like these little hours or half an hour gaps of where I can use it. I can go on it and it kind of almost feels like a little treat. And it's also like especially good at night because before bedtime I can just scroll for hours. I'm so bad at it. But this app has like helped me to be like literally blocked me out of the app. Apps like Amazon or ASOS or things that you do go on to like scroll, even Safari, it will block you out of Safari. Like it will block you out of any app that you have on your phone. I tried the free version for like 7 days and realised, yes, absolutely, take my money. So I paid for the full price and it is worth every single penny. Highly recommend you check it out. Tell you what app I am loving, throw a bit of a curveball out there, is ASDA Rewards. Don't come for me, bro. Favourite Nightwish album. For everyone who was like, oh, he's Nightwish, a heavy symphonic metal band, which is one of my favourite bands ever. It's one of those types of music that just kind of I feel safe in. I'm going to do that thing where I try and justify why I like an album, and I don't want to do that because I'm trying to get better at not explaining myself and not justifying why I like someone. So someone who follows me on Instagram also likes Nightwish. Can we be friends? Because I don't know anyone who likes Nightwish. I'm such a massive Floor fan. Basically, the band's had 3 singers, and the current one is the best one, and so I really like the albums with her on it. What is my favourite one? It's really difficult to put because I like certain songs from different albums. Throwing a curveball here, I really love Imaginarium the score, which is basically like a film score that they wrote for a film that they made. That film score has genuinely got me through some really, really difficult times in my life. If it wasn't for that film score, I would never have written my book. And it's just like an album that I put on when I feel really unsafe and low and sad. Imaginarium the score. But other than that, do you know what, I'm gonna have to say Once, because that was like the first album I heard and that's got some corkers on there. Let's be real, corkers. Only answer if you're comfy. But what's it like to date someone that also has CF? Let me tell you. Let me come back down here for this one. Okay, just a quick explanation for those who don't understand, but people with CF aren't allowed to meet because of cross-infection, meaning that I could give the infection that I have in my lungs to someone else with CF because of the lung ecosystem and because the immune system is lower in other people with CF. Basically, the cross-infection rule really only applies to people with CF. If I met someone who doesn't have CF, then it wouldn't be a risk because someone who has normal lungs won't ever get the infections that I have in my lungs. That's just the way it works. Cross-infection has always like really been drilled into me as like something that you cannot ever do in your life. And I've always been like really strict with that. Always growing up, when you have CF, you're always put into your own room. If you ever had to go into hospital or if you ever had to go in for like a clinic appointment, you would always have your own room and be very much segregated and separated from anyone else who has CF because of this policy. Like it's really, really strict. And so I always felt like really, really uncomfortable meeting anyone else with CF. Usually that would be like outside of the hospital, you know, maybe in the car park, or, you know, maybe my parents' friends have a son or daughter with CF. We kind of meet them out and about. I always felt like really uncomfortable, like to the point that sometimes I actually held my breath because I was so scared that I was going to get something, which is completely valid. Like I understand how people feel with it. So how did we go from that holding my breath around other people with CF to dating one. Before we even were dating, like when we were just friends, I would meet up with him and I wouldn't have that in my head. I don't know why. I think he just made me feel so comfortable in like being myself and just chatting to me like anyone, like any normal person would, because I've always had like this really internal mental struggle with CF, and like people seeing me with this condition and having that perceived judgment of like, oh, these people are judging me because I have a chronic condition. But with James, I never felt like that because he has CF. So like he knows what it's like and he's not going to judge me because we both have the same condition. So I think automatically there was a bit of like an acceptance when we first started meeting up. Then eventually when we did start dating, there was already that acceptance there. And like there's that less judgment there. I think that's always like a really big bonus when it comes to something like this. Or at least it was for me anyway. But I don't ever think of him as, oh, that's James with CF. I think of him as that, oh, that's James. That's the end of the conversation. That doesn't even occur to me. Genuinely, that's the truth. I forget that we both have CF. One of the benefits is that like one of you is always going to have creons. So if you forget to bring your creons out with you, then it's likely the other person has one, and that's great. This is not endorsement, by the way. People are old enough and ugly enough to make their own decisions about whether they meet someone with CF, and I'm not endorsing that. I'm not endorsing that because that is your own decision to make. Like I said, for me, like I was really strict with it. I even wrote a massive long blog post on cross-infection and why it was so bad. But the truth is, like, in the 2.5 years that we have dated, neither of us have ever crossed anything. Not a single thing. It probably is massively down to Kaftrio, to be fair, contributing. That's the modulator drug, for people who don't know. But yeah, we've never crossed anything. But even like when I have this coldy thing that I have now, my own lurgy, James doesn't get that. I don't know how. I'm snotting all over the place and he doesn't get it at all. You know, I'm really not in the CF community at all anymore because I think after the video I did with James a while back, I kind of felt really disconnected from it. The problem is that a lot of people are still really stuck in the past. And I know the research because I did the research when I did this blog post about cross-infection. Like back in the 90s when cross-infection was really prominent, there was like all of these epidemics from, you know, CF people having summer camps together and crossing the exact same of strain infection over to one another. And that's how they realised, oh, maybe we should actually, you know, prevent this, put them in separate rooms and stop the cross-infection, which worked. So it's really relevant back then. But I think you got to remember now, in 2024, you know, there are so many drugs and medication and modulator drugs and new therapies coming out every day. You know, there was no hypertonic salines or Kaftrio back in the 90s. And I think that's like a really big factor to consider. Like without all of these drugs, you know, we would not be as healthy as we would be today, or at least it is for me. And I think that's, again, like it's a really difficult situation because not everyone with CF can benefit from all of these drugs. Like a lot of people have side effects when it comes to these modulator drugs, but both me and James like work really well on Kaftrio and it's done amazing things for us. Neither of us cough anymore. Like that's such a big factor in it. Not endorsing it, you do whatever you want to do with it. If I haven't answered your questions, I'm so sorry. There are a lot to go through. I don't think there would be. But if you have any other questions, then leave them in the comments below and I will do my best to answer it in the next video. If you have made it this far, drop an emoji of the beach umbrella thing with the sand. Thank you so much for watching, and of course I will see you in the next one.